Good morning and thank you for joining us on Breakfast Central this Tuesday morning. We hope that you enjoy the next 2 hours with us, where we deliberate and, of course, speak on major issues across Nigeria. We encourage you, as always, to be a part of our conversation simply by following our social media platforms at News Central TV, and also share your thoughts with us via the phone lines when, of course, that opens up in the 8 o'clock hour during the newspaper review. Good morning once again. This morning, before we get to share with you what our top stories are and also bring you breakfast headlines, one of the things that we likely would be expressing conversations on, or having conversations on this morning, is the news or the reports of a very, very shocking attack by Boko Haram terrorists on a military base in Borno State. It was reported yesterday, and video clips from it show, an unconfirmed number of casualties from the Nigerian army, reportedly. Of course, we're still going to be x-raying that story and having a conversation this morning with security experts to share exactly their thoughts on what exactly may have occurred or what may have happened over there. But it once again brings back questions as to what exactly or how far and how well we have gone with regards to fight against insecurity and fight against terrorism in Nigeria. I remember that I started the show yesterday talking a little bit about it, as to having the government, be sincere with Nigerians as to what exactly the challenges are with the Nigerian army and with Nigerian security, forces generally. I did watch an interview on, a foreign TV station, where the Nigerian Army spokesperson, of course, was interviewed, and he spoke about some of all these things. But many questions need to be asked. And yes, we should give the government kudos for the wins that we've recorded so far, for the parts of this, this conversation where the Nigerian government has definitely achieved a lot. But if we still are hearing about Boko Haram in 2025, then of course, we need to once again, ask those very, very important questions. What exactly is still yet to be done? How many parts of northern Nigeria maybe do these people still exist in? What are their numbers? What does the Nigerian military and Nigerian security forces generally need in order to win this fight? And at what point will we as a country be able to say that we have completely rid the country of terrorism completely? And we're talking about ISWAP and Boko Haram and Lakurawa and the bandits and the unknown gunmen. What more needs to be done in every aspect of the fight against insecurity? It's not just about better arms now. It's also, but like I said yesterday, also about having safer borders or tighter borders, so that arms and ammunition cannot just continue to freely flow to these terror groups. But tracking the funding, figuring out who exactly is behind these terror groups, where does their funding come from, and who needs to be arrested, who needs to be questioned. Are there parts of this conversation that we are not being told? Because it is basically has taken about a decade, and in 2025, more than a decade really, and in 2025, this is where we still are. And so those questions must be asked and must be answered. And I don't know that it is a good place for us to not have this as a critical conversation being discussed in the National Assembly this morning, to ask the Nigerian government, the executive, and the Nigerian security forces what exactly the challenges still are. Are we going to just continue to exist in this way and lose these very brave soldiers of the Nigerian army to these terror groups? At what point will it become, a national emergency that must be spoken about? And, questions will be asked, by the Nigerian army. What more do you need to win this fight? How much more funding? How much more equipment? How much more ammunition? How much more intelligence gathering? How much, more recruitment into the Nigerian army would you need to win this fight? And away from the kinetic, aspects of it, in what other ways must this fight be taken for us to be able to beat our chest and say that, yes, we have won it? Will the current administration be able to win this fight? The Goodluck Jonathan government didn't. The Muhammadu Buhari government didn't for 8 years. And arguably, it even became worse under the Muhammadu Buhari administration. And so will the current administration be able to beat its chest and say, yes, we have won the fight against terrorism? the other aspects, the poverty, the ability to recruit young Nigerians into these terror groups, the ease with which these terror groups maybe also buy their arms and ammunition and flood the country with these arms, to these terror groups. There's many aspects of this that I believe must be questioned rather, and we need to start taking more seriously. So again, will this attack in Borno State, in the army base in Borno State, will it be what will trigger the Nigerian National Assembly to actually now call, the heads of the army and security agencies, the executive, and start asking these questions? What more do you need? How much more money do you need? How much more equipment do you need? Is there any bureaucracy? Is there something that is stopping the army from getting the equipment that it needs, or the training that it needs, or the funding that it needs? What exactly, are we lacking? Are there, internal saboteurs in the Nigerian army? There's too many questions that must be asked, because, again, if Nigeria says that it is not at war, then we cannot continue to lose these brave soldiers of the Nigerian army to terrorists. We also cannot continue to lose innocent civilian lives to these terror groups. I mean, how in 2025 are we still here? How have we spent the last maybe 3 decades and we've not been able to continuously boost the strength and the abilities and the capabilities of Nigeria's security agencies? What have we ignored in the last 2 decades? What are the things that we know that we need these things, but we just ignore them because, well, it's not a priority of the Nigerian government with regard to security. When are we going to have a proper conversation about securing our borders? When are we going to ask the questions, about the possibility of internal saboteurs, about corruption, and what it has done to Nigeria's security? How many more of these military lives need to be lost needlessly? And so again, it's maybe also an opportunity to call on the Bola Tinubu administration. This is your opportunity to write your name in the history books of Nigeria, that it was under your administration that we fought the war against terrorism, and we fought it to victorious. And we're able to completely rid the country. But I once again understand that it's not just the military might that we need here. It's our borders, it's unemployment, it is poverty, it is, many other aspects of, of course, financial tracking, many other aspects of it that need to work hand in hand if we are serious about ending the insecurity challenges. I don't want to believe that, well, they are just, lazy or they're incompetent. I don't want to believe that. I believe that there's many other aspects of it that are still not being addressed at the same time. But we must, at this point, start to take it as a national emergency, as seriously as we take every other thing that, disturbs us as a nation. We must start to take the fight against insecurity as seriously as that, and ask these very important questions. Well, I'll start by telling you that gunmen reportedly led by the notorious bandit leader Danny Suhu have allegedly imposed a 172 million naira levy on 25 villages in Safe West, Zamfara State. Counterintelligence expert Zagazola Makama disclosed this on his official X account, that the levies include demands for bags of soybeans and threats of violence against those unable to comply. Fearing reprisals, hundreds of residents have abandoned their homes, farmlands, and livelihoods, while security has reportedly improved in Safe town and along the Funtua-Safe axis. Rural villages in Safe West continue to remain vulnerable to attacks. Local leaders have appealed to authorities for urgent intervention, calling for the deployment of more security personnel and the establishment of permanent security posts in the area to protect the affected communities. And also in the news, and still talking security matters, terrorists linked to the Islamic State of West Africa province have killed 6 soldiers in an attack on a military base in northeast Nigeria. Military sources revealed that ISWAP fighters stormed the Sabongari base in Borno State's Damboa district early on Sunday arriving in trucks and on motorcycles. The attackers set the army base and vehicles ablaze, forcing troops to retreat. Fighter jets were deployed from Maiduguri, the regional capital located about 100 kilometers away, and struck the militants as they fled. Nigeria's northeast has been a hotspot for insurgency since 2009, with groups like Boko Haram, ISWAP, and armed criminal gangs contributing to widespread violence. The conflict has claimed over 40,000 lives and displaced about 2 million people in the region. And the Nigerian police has paraded about 50 suspected vandals bordering on the theft of manhole covers and other public infrastructure within the Federal Capital Territory. The FCT Commissioner of Police, Olatunji Disu, made this known during the parade of the suspects in Abuja, saying that several manhole covers, vehicles, solar street lights, and rods used in the construction of flyovers were being targeted by the suspects, saying that their action posed serious threats to public safety. Still in the news, the Sokoto State government has expressed condolences and pledged support for the victims of the recent fire outbreak at the Kare market in Sokoto. The inferno, which destroyed over 50 shops, 132 grinding machines, and large quantities of foodstuffs such as rice, millet, and beans, caused losses amounting to millions of naira. Deputy Governor Idris Gobert visited the scene to sympathize with those affected and announced the formation of a committee to assess the damage and recommend preventive measures. Gobert assured the victims of prompt government intervention once the committee submits its report. The fire has significantly impacted both local and non-local traders, many of whom depend on the market for their livelihoods. Now, away from Nigeria, but still in the west part of the continent, security forces were deployed across Conakry, Guinea's capital, on Monday, following the military-led government's ban on a planned opposition protest against the ruling junta. The protest, organized by the opposition coalition Living Forces of Guinea, aimed to pressure the junta, which seized power in a 2021 coup, to transfer authority to a civilian government. Authorities announced the ban late on Sunday, citing lack of prior notification. On Monday, armed men, some in vehicles linked to security forces, were seen dispersing gatherings and instructing residents to return home. Protests in Guinea are frequently banned by the authorities and often escalate into deadly violence, underscoring the tension between the junta and opposition groups in the West African nation.
The Nigeria Police Force says that it has rescued 5 children who were allegedly trafficked by Pastor Dayo Bernard of the End Time Army Ministry in Bukuru, Plateau State. The force public relations officer made this known in Abuja, where he says that the suspects and their accomplices have been arrested by the police. Our correspondent Idong Joseph has more on this story.
The parade of the suspects began with a case involving the arrest of suspects linked to the murder of Hassan Jega, the divisional police officer of Agbaro Police Division, located in Delta State, on October 14, 2024. The police also accused the gang of being complicit in car theft and selling stolen vehicles to interested buyers.
On the criminal activities of a gang of armed robbers specialized in robbing exotic cars within the southeast region of this country. Arrested 1 Ogaga Dixon male and recovered 1 AK-47 rifle, 1 English pistol, 1 locally made pistol, ammunition of various calibers, and 6 vehicles from him. The same group around October 2024 had set an ambush after a void operation that led to the death of CSP Hassan Jega.
The police also paraded members of a trafficking syndicate accused of abducting and selling children. According to the police spokesperson, the suspects, comprised of men and women, allegedly lured their victims with promise of education and a better life, only to sell them into slavery.
The said Pastor Dayo Bernard confessed that he went to Kwande district, Kwanpan local government of the state, in the disguise of evangelism, where he told the parents that he has an NGO to orphanage and convinced them to release their children to him for sponsorship.
The police said that firearms have also been recovered from several suspects involved in armed robbery incidents along the Kaduna-Kanu area of the northwestern region of the country.
Yali Hassan, male 35, Ado Aruna, male 58 years. One AK-47 rifle, 2 empty magazines, 1 locally fabricated rifle were recovered from them.
The Force Public Relations Officer says that the arrest and recoveries represent a significant breakthrough in the fight against crime in the country. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Well, thanks to Idong Joseph for that report. Now, Peter Obi, the Labour Party's presidential candidate, has alleged that he received threats to his life following his New Year's message, where he criticized the current administration's handling of the economy and security. This shocking claim has raised concerns about the safety of the opposition leaders and the potential for political tension to escalate. The threats allegedly stem from his comments on the country's worsening economic and security situation, including the rising poverty rate, insecurity, and corruption.
Peter Obi's New Year's message was a scathing critique of the APC's performance, highlighting the country's decline in various sectors, including the economy, security, and education. The APC's response was swift, with Felix Morka, the party's spokesperson, labeling Obi a prophet of doom and accusing him of trying to score cheap political points. However, the political party and its supporters have fired back, condemning the APC's reaction and the alleged threats to Obi's life, and arguing that the party has a right to express its opinions and criticize the government without fear of intimidation or violence. Now, this morning, we're joined by Ikenna Azomchine, who's the Obedience General for a New Nigeria movement. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning to you both.
I think the first question would be to ask if you've seen the response by Felix Morka and to get a general sense of your thoughts about it.
Well, we all woke up to that threat, and as Obedience, we find it very disturbing that Mr. Morka would choose to, threaten Peter Obi in the manner that we Obedience have always said. Peter Obi has always maintained that violence and attacks on anybody should be, in any way be condemned. So how then is Peter Obi the one threatening and crossing any line? It's obvious that the Nigerian people are being allowed to be malnourished. Nigerian people are hungry. People can't go from point A to point B. Goods and services are not moving. Nigerians are suffering in silence. And whose duty is it to bring that to the notice of the government? It's the opposition. So in any country that aspires to reach out to its people, they must allow the opposition to air their views. I've not seen anywhere Peter Obi goofed here or Peter Obi threatened anybody. So we must condemn these threats, and we must call on the international community to take note of Mr. Morka's comments, and further on, ask the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu to caution, or if possible, sack Mr. Morka, because he's just blowing trumpets for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things or the points that, Felix Morka is, I believe, saying is, that things are not as bad as Peter Obi is, painting them, and of course, he's describing as a prophet of doom. So, I mean, do you think that is a fair argument? That yes, things may, not be as interesting or as beautiful as we want it, but it's not as bad as Peter Obi might be describing them, and he's maybe, painting a much darker picture as the opposition than what really is.
I don't know if Mr. Morka has not been in the news, where people are being killed for looking for going to collect palliatives, rice and all that. When last was Nigerians, killed even in the southeast for palliatives? Nigerians are gasping for air. Has he not gone to his village this Christmas? Most people can't afford meat, rice, the basics. So we are on ground. We obedience, we know the sufferings of Nigerians. And we can only expect our leader to bring these same sufferings to the notice of the government. And whereas he is doing this, and somebody is saying that he's crossing the line, and with all these kinds of threats, I think we need to ask serious questions here. Are we not allowed to talk again? Where are the dividends of democracy that you promise the people? Well, it's just accountability. It will be only ask the government to take account of the promises they made to the Nigerian people.
Okay, I just want to also ask if you saw that interview that Felix Morka granted that generated this reaction from His Excellency Peter Obi.
I watched it.
Okay.
I watched it twice.
Great. And why I'm asking is because there have been people who say that his response, the response of Mr. Felix Morka, wasn't necessarily saying that, it was in response to a question that the interviewer had asked. Basically, because if you watch the interview, a number of the conversations seemed like personal attacks against Peter Obi. In cases where he referred to him as Tegwo Law, where he said you can be a taxi driver asking, giving Mr. President advice, and it looked a little more personal. So some have argued that the interpretation of that might have been because the interviewer is, asking if this isn't too much of a personal attack. So do you think that is there a sense to the argument that it might be because of how personal the interview was, as opposed to it being, something that might spiral into a threat from Mr. Felix Morka himself? And that's not to discountenance the fact that there might certainly have been threats from other people, but I'm talking about the interview with Felix Morka.
Well, from what everybody can see, Mr. Felix Morka was ready to, malent the P2B in a way that, why would you go that personal? Mr. Morka is the publicity secretary for the APC. You stay within the line. P2B has not crossed any lines. And I can tell you today, obedience believe that P2B is not hard enough. So for P2B to speak out and being attacked this way, I think there's a problem. The frustration of the ruling APC that they've not been able to really, give to the Nigerian people those promises they made. It's not about P2B, it's about the facts on ground that the Nigerian state needs XYZ things to move on, to thrive. And P2B, as the lead opposition leader, must speak out. You cannot, silence the voice of the opposition, no matter what threats you bring forth. I don't think P2B tells the Nigerians how much threats he gets on a daily basis. Even we who are obedient, we know how we go by the Nigerians who are really on the side of government. Sometimes it's a heated argument, but all I can tell all of us here, remember first that we're all Nigerians. If we don't criticize each other, so how do we get it right here? We must criticize each other to get it right. In other democracies, these debates are face to face. They speak to you, you speak to them face to face. But because of the way and manner we've handled our democracy, people even see you as a madman criticizing government. They should welcome P2B's advice, because that's the only way they will be able to do better. If you're not criticized, you can never do better.
All right. I want to ask, because one of the things that you mentioned is, that the obedient community, even think that Peter Obi is not, pushing hard enough. What exactly would you describe as, the Peter Obi that the obedient community, from what you've described, would like to see? How much harder would, the obedient community, like to see him, push?
From the obedience perspective, we think that the lawmakers that we are elected into the House should be the ones speaking out by the time some of these laws are passed. For example, overspending. the lawmakers must stop this assembly from allowing the president to, to make some frivolous or very
I'm not speaking about lawmakers now. Apology, I'm not speaking about lawmakers now. From your earlier statements, you said you mentioned that the obedient movement don't even think that Peter Obi is pushing hard enough or is being as aggressive as he should be. I hope I got that right. So what I'm asking is,
yes.
what exactly would you describe as, what the obedient movement really expects from Peter Obi?
We want Peter Obi to really insist on those things that the government promised while campaigning. The good governance, provision of amenities for the people, hospitals, good roads, infrastructure for the people. Where are the CNG buses? Nigerians can't even move from one point to the other. Those are the real issues. We should go to the real issues and really, you see, the one time he has hit them hard, telling them the real issues, people are threatening him. How can an opposition leader now speak? When he speaks, you threaten him. So, but we are saying that if anything happens to Peter Obi, the international community must hold Mr. Walker and his crew. Because we know that Mr. Peter Obi is not a violent man. He has never asked anyone to go and protest. Even when we try to protest, Peter Obi tells you you're your own. So the ruling APC must see Peter Obi as a viable opposition to work with. These threats are condemned. We condemn it in its entirety, and we urge the president to sack or possibly caution Mr. Felix Walker.
I mean, it's one thing to urge the president to sack or caution Mr. Walker, who was also once a part of a strong opposition, but right now, he's aligned himself with the government. But do you actually see that happening? Is this a final call by the obedience? And if the president doesn't do this, will that maybe get reactions?
Like I've always told you, we have obedience in all the political parties. We will be doing our best to reach out to them. They must maintain the peace and unity of this country. We, obedience, have never in any way have any notion to destabilize or disturb Nigeria, disturb the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. We are waiting for 2027 for us to fiercely contest the presidency to bring about the good governance that we are craving for. But moving forward, there should be no threats to any opposition. Now, they should be glad that the opposition of Peter Obi is not as aggressive as the previous ones. They should remember during the Good Luck administration, Nigerians were killed, maimed by the opposition, and nothing happened. But we are civil people, we are intelligent people, we are people who have traveled all over the world. We are just saying to the government of the day, give Nigerian people those things that you promised them, and please do it fast.
Yeah. Okay, and also I'd like us to ask about, the right way for opposition to be had. Opposition is a very fundamental part of our democracy. If not, what we'll then have is everybody's, leaning towards one party. But what will be the right way for opposition to be had? And I ask this because part of the criticism I've seen leveled against the interview granted by Felix Walker was how very personal the attacks were as opposed to tackling certain fundamental issues. So maybe you can speak to that and speak to how all the parties, can work together to maybe, I'm talking of the opposition parties, can work together to form a formidable opposition in Nigeria.
Well, that's up to the opposition leaders to find a way to put themselves together to meet this heavy challenge we have coming in 2027. But for Mr. Felix Walker, I must tell him that I don't know what his anger is about Peter Obi. Peter Obi is a man of the people. Peter Obi, it was generally accepted that Peter Obi won this election. So his anger and his jealousy, I think, because I think when he sees Peter Obi in the airport or anywhere on his way, people generally accept Peter Obi. So he should go back to his government and find out what he can do better to be the man of the people. He should not just come and start saying nonsense, because we think what he said was nonsense. Peter Obi has always maintained his lane. Obedience, you go and do the right things. Do not cause trouble. insists on asking the ruling APC to give the Nigerian people those promises that they made. If only they can give us those promises they made, Nigerians will be complaining. So Mr. Walker should henceforth desist from threatening Mr. P2B. He is in no way in the class of Mr. P2B. I hope he understands that. He is in no way at all has got any levels to compare, to speak in the manner he spoke about P2B. P2B are not his peers. He should go and look for his peers.
Yeah. No, I also want you to highlight, if you are, privy to any of that information, when he speaks about threats to his life, can you tell us anything about it? Are these from, fellow politicians? Is it from the ruling party? Is it from, social media users? What exactly has Peter Obi been dealing with, when he says the threats to his life?
Well, I will allow Mr. Peter Obi to speak for himself for that. I cannot tell you everything here, but I can tell you that the man is facing a whole lot of challenges. And we can only support him by saying to the Nigerian government, please allow the opposition to thrive. Mr. Peter Obi has been a wonderful opposition leader. He has never, ever, in my own, for the past 2 years that I've been working within the closely to Mr. Peter Obi, I have not had Mr. Peter Obi sanction any protest, not even one. So how can you threaten this man? It's unfair. And I want the security agencies those that are around Peter Obi to make sure that nothing happens to that man. Because if anything happens to Mr. Peter Obi, Nigeria it will be anarchy.
Oh,
how can you threaten Peter Obi? We are even telling Peter Obi, you need to go, you need to tell the Nigerian government to sit up. Each time we sit to Mr. Peter Obi, you are not saying enough. You need to tell this government what they are not doing right. And for one time, this man is talking, you're threatening him. Then we have a problem. We have a serious problem.
Are you very certain, about, your statements? You're saying if anything happens to him, there would be anarchy. Is this, the general thinking and belief from the obedient community, or is it from Nigerians generally? And do you say that with, certain level of certainty?
Nigerian people love Peter Obi, and we will not allow anybody to intimidate Peter Obi. You know of the fact that Peter Obi is loved by all. People see Peter Obi as the Messiah. That was why they casted the votes they casted. That has never happened in the history of Nigeria. An opposition party shaking the ruling party, plus all the maneuvering, all the silencing of the voters, Peter Obi still won Lagos State. How can you now come and not allow this same man in countries where the opposition are respected? You bring Peter Obi on the table and speak to him. That's what we expect from this government. Bring Peter Obi on board. Hey, where are those things you say we are not doing good? Let us do it together. After all, the Nigerian people first.
Again, I'll go back to the question.
That's what we expect from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to call on Peter Obi to get his ideas, to give the opposition the time frame before the elections, before the heated election. You can partner. What is wrong with partnering with the opposition?
And do you think that Mr. Peter Obi will be open to the partnership with Mr. President?
When we are the obedience, we are saying that what's wrong with Peter Obi criticizing you? Are you sending one arm of your government to say, okay, Mr. Peter Obi, how do we do X, Y, Z? That's what we are talking about. Instead of threatening him, is he making any points in the first place? Yes, he is.
All right, I'll go back to the question about formidable opposition. Do you see the possibility of the Labour Party maybe unifying with any of the other political parties to stand as an opposition? And do you currently consider the structure of the Labour Party as a strong enough opposition, to stand against the current administration in the incoming elections?
Well, that's left to the opposition parties to put their hands together, because they know the challenges they will face. And we are talking about the threats to Peter Obi. We condemn it. We urge the international community to take note of those threats, and we hope and pray that the Nigerian state will never, ever have reasons for all of us to run into each other. We don't want any crisis in Nigeria. Opposition should be allowed to air their views. Opposition should be allowed to go about their businesses, and that is what we are pleading to Mr. President.
Yeah, I mean, final question for me would be on Labour Party again. The most recent news updates concerning the elections, it's seemingly saying that the ticket is open. It's not, it may not be given to Peter Obi. It's currently open to anybody. What are your thoughts on the current Labour Party leadership and the current Labour Party as it is, the way it has been handled? Do you still believe that it is the platform that Peter Obi should maybe use in his journey towards the presidency?
Peter Obi is a very smart politician. I think he's doing his business about finding the right place to be. And we obedience, we are obediently waiting. Like I said, we are not speaking for Peter Obi. Peter Obi has the intelligence to know which people to partner with, and we are waiting for that. The Labour Party itself, we expect Labour Party to go back to the drawing board, conduct an all-inclusive convention, which Mr. Peter Obi had requested earlier. All that has not been done. And we, obedience, we feel that some big rats, I repeat it again, are causing the problems in the Labour parties. But that's not what I'm here for today. Labour Party knows what to do if they want to keep Peter Obi on board. And when they do that, I think that will be, that will be the end of all these talks. But as long as we have a Labour Party that has not conducted itself in the right manners, that we see that they are credible enough for Peter Obi to continue to do business with them, we will be waiting for Peter Obi, in fact, for him to tell us the way forward, because this is entirely his decision to make. But we say no to threats to Peter Obi. We say no to threats to opposition. Opposition should be allowed to thrive. It is a democracy, and that is the beauty of democracy.
When you say that the Labour Party knows what it needs to do to keep Peter Obi on, what do you mean?
Conduct an all-inclusive convention from the wards to the local government to the state to the federal level. That's what Mr. Peter Obi had requested from the Apure-led Labour Party. By the time you conduct this convention, there will be new leaders. Imagine it should be free and fair. It should be all-inclusive. As long as that is not done, I don't think the issues between the Labour Party and Peter Obi is settled. But it might be settled. I'm sure he's on top of the matter.
Okay, well, we'll see. Time will tell. Thank you very much, Ikena Azomchine, for joining us this morning and for sharing your thoughts with us. We'll see where this leads. Thanks for your time once again.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Now, these conversations, definitely will continue, and we expect that there will be more reactions either from the ruling party or from the opposition or the obedient.
Just to mention again, in reference to what has caused this issue, is a particular question that was asked in an interview. The question was, you have actually hit back with a volley of attacks, calling Obi a prophet of doom. Some of you have said he's always embarking in voodoo economics that are not in line with current realities. Don't you think that this is a slingshot that has gone beyond normal politicking? And then Felix Morka he said, no, he's the one that is throwing that. Mr. Obi is shooting from the hip. He's not looking. He's not taking an aim. He's just shooting wildly like what we used to see in movies back in the day in the Wild Wild West. He's not being rational. He's absolutely irrational in his thinking and in his public commentary for a man who was governor for 8 years. Then he goes down to say, that is wrong. I am not somebody to go on the offensive in that manner. But Mr. Obi has crossed the line so many times, and I think that at this point, he has coming to him whatever he gets, he needs to manage it. This is a statement that has caused the reaction from the Labour Party presidential candidate, His Excellency Peter Obi, as well as the obedience, who have now taken this as a threat to his life. His Excellency Peter Obi had put out a post saying that, they should take note of this, and is asking if he has crossed the line. And maybe we should ask you watching to let us know what your thoughts. Yes, that's the tweet there. He said, have I really crossed the line? I asked the question because my New Year message has now led to threats against my life, my family, and those around me. While I have received all sorts of messages, one Mr. Felix Morka has gone further to accuse me of crossing the line and has warned that I will face the consequences. So he then shares this and asks Nigerians if he has crossed the line. We must mention here that we here at News Central TV criticize any form of threat against his life. I do think that if he comes out to say that there's a threat against his life, we do not in any way, shape, or form support it and criticize it. And we ask, it's hoped that they'll be investigated, that if these threats, he can present these threats to the Nigerian police and they'll take it up and, have the necessary investigations. But then again, I think the final thing that I want to say about this whole story is opposition is an important part of politics. Those at the helm of affairs need to be comfortable with being criticized. You cannot be a leader. You can't be at the top of your game without expecting criticism. People will analyze and x-ray the work that you've done. And if you've done good work, they'll tell you well done. That's not to say that, there's nothing good that they've absolutely done. But if the Labour Party presidential candidate is highlighting the areas that need to be worked on, it's important to then listen and say, okay, these are the ways in which we can take this feedback. What we do not want to encourage is a government that is opposed to criticism. We don't want
It's been like this for the last couple of years. It's not new.
Yeah.
We claim to be in a democracy, but there's a lot that is undemocratic about the actions of the ruling party many times. So it's nothing new, plus the fact that the opposition parties have also shot themselves in the foot many times, and the ruling parties mostly just take advantage of it. Also in a situation where the ruling party seems to be working hand in hand with all agencies of government, to take side with it, a lot of times. And of course, Peter Obi said it in the statement there that, we seem to be moving into an authoritarian government, but there's a lot more to speak on with that.
And you can criticize policies and make it not too personal and start calling names and all that. That's really below the belt. Anyway,
we're going to a short break. When we come back, we continue the conversations this morning on Breakfast Central.
Weeks after the Nigerian army declared war against insurgents in the north by neutralizing terrorists, the military high command says no fewer than 1,166 terrorists died from the bullets and aerial bombardment in their numerous hideouts, while 1,096 others were taken into custody in the month of August alone.
With the progress made so far by the Nigerian army, yesterday proved to be yet another setback as a forward operating base in the Damboa local government area of Borno State was reported to have been attacked by Boko Haram terrorists on Saturday, January 4th, 2025, resulting in several casualties among the Nigerian soldiers. We must also warn you that, of course, some of these videos and pictures can be very disturbing. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Air Force said it has acquired 12 additional fighter aircraft, while it mentioned that armed drones will be used to fight bunkering and insecurity. Now let's talk about some of these recent events and counterattacks by the terrorists, by a security expert who's joining us, Onyekachi Adekola. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right.
It's Adekoya, actually.
Adekoya, I beg your pardon. I want to start with a general view of where we are. And, the reason is, so there's the attack on the forward operating base. There is also the report in Zamfara State where it says here bandits have imposed a 172 million naira levy on villages in Zamfara. In Safe, west of Zamfara State, where it says that the villagers are meant to pay with soybeans and money and rice and some other things. And of course, because of that, they've started to flee those villages. In the southeast, I saw that Chidi Odinkalu posted something yesterday saying that what seems to have been a systematic slaughter last night across several communities in Osu local government area, with the casualty count at about 23, but could be higher. So let's get a general view of where we are with these attacks and what exactly might be going on with Nigerian security sector.
Again, first of all, Happy New Year to the viewers and good morning to those of you in the studio. Nigeria still, we've made some progress last year. But again, like I'd always say, there are structural issues that makes almost mincemeal of some of the challenges that we have, because you are shooting at a moving target. Basically, that's what's occurring. In the first case you mentioned in Damboa, the Chadians had moved about 2,000 soldiers to just about the border, according to reports, and they had begun a clearance operation on their own side, which forced some of the insurgents over to our own side, according to the reports. Again, also know that at the time we had 3 divisions in the northeast. At the height of the insurgency, we've had to now cut down on the amount of forces, resources we have deployed, because you also have a raging problem in the northwest.
Yeah.
So to some extent, we thinned out a bit. The problem we thought had gone away since last year, towards later last year, had been showing some resurgence. I mean, we're also considering the fact that they had been narrowed just to the Sambisa forest. So that's the long and short of the issue in the northeast, northwest. But something significant is starting to occur. The military high command did also report that the terrorists are beginning to also engage in ISR, intelligence surveillance reconnaissance, using drones. And there's been, at the last count, almost 6 to 7 sightings of them using drones before conducting an attack. I think that's what is changing. In the northwest side, I mean, it's no news that people have to pay Ansaru or pay some bandit group for protection. I mean, that's where we are. That's where we are, basically.
Also in the southeast?
It's the same thing. In the south, it is called Egunche. You have to pay the money. You want to bury a loved one, you want to do a ceremony. In some part, not in all parts of the southeast. I was in the southeast over the holidays on 2 occasions. Security has improved. But again, the Olu axis of Imo State still has its own issues.
Yeah.
Other parts of the southeast are not as bad as they used to be. So there is some progress. But the problem with bad news is that it seems to have a lot of friends these days. Again, you can expect that because people don't anticipate evil or don't expect evil to occur. So when they do occur, they suck the room of oxygen, as it were, which almost makes nonsense of the good work that the armed forces and police and the sacrifices that they're making day in, day out.
I wanted you to also see if you can help us shed some light on what may have occurred with the Mieti Allah, the head of the Mieti Allah being kidnapped. I think he was killed, rather, and that his wives were kidnapped. I don't know if you heard of that story. And to find out what might have been, if there is an update regarding that story as well. His wives were kidnapped. We hear that they were being chased, and after a while there was an exchange of gunfire, and then they had to leave one vehicle behind and leave one wife behind.
Unfortunately, I have not been following that story.
Okay.
If he has been, I mean, it's people are kidnapped every other day in this country, sadly. So,
okay, let's go back to what you said about the fact that they've now started, these terrorists and unknown gunmen have started to conduct surveillance, and they're using weapons and using some very advanced gadgets like drones to conduct their surveillance as well. We can't deny the fact that, I mean, this will take us back to the reports by the NBS about how much was paid to kidnappers and terrorists in the past year. And how do we then get to the point where we can maybe reduce ransom payments? Because a number of these monies then go into funding equipment, buying high-tech equipment, and then we can't also ignore the area of the porosity of our borders by which these equipments and these, you know, gadgets come into the country. So how do we then get to the point where we can start to reduce the amount of monies that are being paid? Basically, how do we get over this?
So interesting on this issue of drone, the military high command did claim that the insurgents used baby drones, that they were not sophisticated drones. But I don't know how much of the drone warfare the Nigerian army is following up on. I mean, you even have drones relaying signals. You now have drone repeaters, you know, so drone warfare is quite sophisticated. And the problem with drone warfare is attrition. You can attrit a conventional force like the Nigerian army with cheap and cheerful drones. So what you call baby drones, yes, they may be baby, but in the philosophy of modern day warfare, those are the ideal tools to treat a well-entrenched, well-resourced force. So it's a big problem. I don't know how much of the electronic warfare equipment we have, but again, it opens another vista. Like I said, it's a moving target. Now we've gone into the insurgents, terrorists using drone warfare for surveillance. The next question is, how do you counter the drone warfare? Now, on the issue of continued payments of ransom and how we deal with it, unfortunately, ransom will still be paid this year, unfortunately, even till next year and the year after. I heard just by the side that the state governments had said they now support state police. It's now all talk. Let's follow the trend and follow the way the operations is going. We have the military in operations across 31 states. The size of the military is the Nigerian Army, not up to 200,000. Our total landmass is about 923,000 or 30-something thousand square kilometers. It's big. And you have the military spread thin, doing even the work of internal policing. And then the police themselves protecting big men and protecting assets. And you don't have enough policemen for the normal day-to-day policing they should be doing. The net impact is that you're going to have this, they'll be dropping the balls at critical points because the police cannot dominate their AOR, their area of responsibility. Neither can the military. So Nigeria as a country is happening to our armed forces. Why the politicians bicker and why people, struggle to make sense of what the space is like. You have people who put their life on the line every day, ill-equipped, ill-resourced, ill-trained, ill-supported, asking them to confront the myriad. What we have in Nigeria is called a hydra-headed wicked problem. A wicked problem is such a problem that you cannot confront using one solution. You must have an array of solutions, something you tilt towards calling an all-of-society approach towards addressing a problem. So just relying on the military and the police alone as currently constituted and resourced to say, how do we stop ransom payments? They cannot. Yeah. Which is why you have seen from Goodluck Jonathan to President Buhari to this current administration that this issue keeps resurfacing. But there's this catchphrase that says, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you're expecting a different result, then perhaps you have said so. I haven't said so.
No, the quote said so.
So that's what the quote says. So sadly, and very sadly, we are very far from a solution. These issues will occur and continue to occur.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we're just going,
Yeah.
So we're not going to win this fight, are we?
We are not shaped yet to win this fight, but we can win the fight.
So do you think a starting point would be to be honest with ourselves as to where exactly we are in our level of preparedness to actually win this fight? Or are we going to go through the Bola Tinubu administration again and then a new government comes in and we continue the same thing? Will we ever be honest with ourselves? Will Nigerian government be honest with Nigerian people even? So the challenge there is two-pronged. No government in the world can be completely honest about its national security posture. Yeah.
Because you have friends, you have states whose interests intersect with your own interests who are out there to take advantage. So honesty, when it comes to national security, you always have classification of information. So honesty is difficult. But in terms of honesty, I don't know how much more honesty you need if the MBS, for example, has given statistics. I mean, what is fact? Facts are observed phenomena. They've stated from only God knows their own set of data. So you see on the news every day, this person killed, this number kidnapped, this person. So how much more honesty do you need other than the reports we're seeing every day that we have a national security structure that is failing? Perhaps you're saying that the people, that's you and I, maybe we need to be honest enough with ourselves to say, okay, maybe we need to hold government to account more seriously. But Nigeria is structured in a way that the person you want to hold to account is far from you. When we talk about security, we all want to hold the president. But you can't see the president readily. The governors that you see if you want to hold them, they'll tell you that they are chief security officers on paper, but they have no responsibility for security.
Right.
For that convenience, I would suppose, without, because these days now they say if you talk anyhow now, they take you to court for defamation. I would suppose perhaps because the governors don't want to be held accountable for security. That's why they keep shanking the responsibility for instituting state police. Because once you have the state police, you can hold the governors first of all. I keep repeating, it's an aberration, short of calling it madness, to be expecting that we all as a country, we hold the president responsible for internal security. He cannot do it. There are 774 local governments. I run a company, and we have offices around the country. I tell you, it's difficult for me, even just with 5 regional offices, to operate, and let alone operating 774 local governments, having one IG in charge of security across the country. So structurally, we are not postured for any serious approach to security.
So if we then fully institutionalize state police, would that be the perfect structure or shape to counter insecurity?
You now begin to give yourself a fair footing. It doesn't solve all the problem. So what that does is that you can now pull the military from their different operations, leaving the police tactical units. So when you have a state police structure, you have forces to dominate general area. You then have tactical teams within the state commands to provide what you call suppressive fire or quick response when the need occurs. The military will now be last resort. But within when you need the military, at least you give them some respite to increase their deployment to forward areas where the attention is needed. In that case of Damboa, for example, that particular fob may have been attacked more than 50 times. But what happened in this instance is that they were overwhelmed. This time they were successful. What does that tell you? Perhaps the troop size had thinned out. Surveillance aside, before you come to that fob, you will have had to cross different installations, different formations. But when you thin out like that, you can't blame the military because you've asked them to move from the northeast to the northwest and then stem issues in the north central. They are succeeding in the north central as they are succeeding in the northwest, but at a cost. And that cost, you see, is the case in Damboa.
Yeah. Okay, so the current administration is not, would you say that they're not being serious with themselves if they start to count the fact that they are maybe making progress against the fight against insecurity?
So this is where we need to support our own armed forces. That one incident, unfortunate incident, of course, shouldn't cast complete aspersions on the work they've been doing. We are fighting a group that has an ideology. They have their agenda is different from that of the society. Unfortunate as it is, it also exposes the underbelly of our posture. So I wouldn't say this administration is not serious. I would say that successive administrations have not been serious. One, to wit that every time we think about security, you say bring in the general. But societal security is different from military approach to security. Military is to fight, kill, and to win. That's what we train them to do. When you begin to look at our 2019, I don't think the national security strategy has been revised, which says that human security will be the pivot upon which we'll do national security in Nigeria. There's nothing militaristic about that. You're talking about an all-of-society approach where you're looking at infrastructure, education, access to justice, access to social amenities that help you achieve your own self-aspiration, that will win people away from extremism. The economy, agriculture, you are looking at a lot of issues around the human being and his own aspiration and how he can find that aspiration with ease without turning to crime. So the question is that, are those other factors beyond the kinetic side of security, are they being addressed? And at what state are we in addressing those other issues? You've seen the macroeconomic reforms that we're going through. The problem with the reform also, and I think that's what this government is trying to do first, is to plug the gaps in funding and in financing. Now the government is awash with funds, if I may use the words. I think the last report I saw is that the federal government may be saving about 1 trillion every month. I may be wrong, but the state governors have increased funding. The next thing now is, what are you doing with the funding? and how do you prioritize. But if you don't have the correct structure, your funding would not go into the right places. So to answer your question about seriousness, it's a security philosophy problem. We've come from an era where the colonial lords bequeathed to us a security architecture that was not for the people. Successive government have come in and they prioritize regime protection. So over the years, you cannot solve a problem that has been on for 60 years overnight. A complete reframing, a complete rethink of how we approach security is needed. The earlier we start, the better for us.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can wrap the conversation up here,
That's
you know, but it is just very disheartening, you know, for me. And again, you know, that's the reason I asked the question, you know, it doesn't seem like it's and no, it's not disregarding the successes that we've recorded, you know, in the fight. But I mean, I think it was also a report of a bomb blast, I'm not sure, a couple of days ago. So, it's just very, very disheartening, you know, almost just seeing clearly that this is not.
And one wonders if it's a funding issue now. 4.91 trillion has been budgeted in 2025. And
so you know, to answer that, part of our problem, all of us in Nigeria, is that our psyche has been so damaged by the military that anytime we say who will save us from insecurity, you think the military. That is our biggest problem. When the politicians are looking for advice on security, they call the retired major general or a general, okay? But industrial security deals now with societal issues, with the criminal justice system, with framing of security for the civilians, by the civilians, to achieve the aspirations of civilians. The military they are now learning internal peacekeeping. What that means is that successively we put the police behind until we start funding the Nigerian police, training them, equipping them to become the police of the future. We will continue to be that backward country where we need the military. I mean, imagine who's talking about security. I saw the chief of defense staff on Al Jazeera.
Yeah, I watched that as well.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Fair enough, we have an insurgency, there's a military operation going on, so he can't speak. I see the defense information person issue press statement. Fair enough, he can do that because while military operations, Nigerians must be briefed every day on what they are doing. But when you do an array of security law enforcement officers, what's the pecking order like? You would always see, they call it protocol. You put the military first. You find somewhere for the police after the military. We're in a democracy, for Christ's sake. The military should not be heard. They should not be seen. We should see more of the police, more of our own DSS, what you may even want to call the FBI, doing their job, funding, increasing their personnel, and let them, because policing goes into the society.
all right.
So that is where we need to morph to. As long as we take a militaristic approach, we will continue to suffer the lack of nuance. And that's the problem we continue to see.
Yeah.
All right. Onyekachi Adekoya, thank you for joining us this morning. We're counting down the days to Armed Forces Remembrance Days on the 15th of January, and hopefully we'll have some, good stories to share on that day, especially to remember the lives of those who have lost their lives and lost loved ones in the service of protecting our country. We'll go on the break, and when we come back, we'll review the newspapers with you. Stay with us.
Welcome once again. Now let's take you through the newspapers and share with you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning. We, of course, are going to be joined to x-ray these stories by our guest analyst, Jide Ologun. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Great to have you. We kick off this morning with the Punch newspapers. Let's see what we can find on the Punch. It says here, New Year message. APC tackles obedience as Obi alleges threat to life. Goes on to say, Obi playing politics of bitterness, says the APC. Nigeria transforming into a repressive regime, says the ex-governor Peter Obi. Northwest bandits fleeing to Oyo, Makinde cries out. That's, scary. And also retirement, top generals get $20,000, medical allowance, bulletproof SUV, and others. Called clash, Aida Tiwa declares curfew as mother and baby, ex-youth leader, others are killed. And also EFCC sacks 27 corrupt officers, probes $400,000 fraud complaint. Woman who cursed Seyi Tinubu, IG, gets 10 million naira bail. And I think final story I'm going to take this morning. 33 ex-workers sue CBN over sacking as they demand 30 billion naira. Away from the Punch newspapers this morning, the Nigerian Tribune comes up next. It says here, New Year message, my life under threat, Obi alleges. ISWAP raids Borno military base, 6 soldiers feared killed. Ibadan stampede, justice must be done, says Governor Seyi Makinde. Court orders Okpebholo, Edo Assembly to maintain status quo. Another 2 council chairmen impeached. Obasanjo, Abiodun, Daniel, Amosu, and others mourn as Madame Edionseri dies at 89. Army uncovers 20 illegal refineries, arrests 11 operators in 4 states. Tax reform bills, Governor's Forum cancelled meeting 4 times, says Oyedele. And also, EFCC dismisses 27 officers for fraudulent activities and misconduct. We're going to start, Mr. Ologun, on the lead story this morning, obviously on the back and forth between Peter Obi, the Obedient Movement, and the ruling party APC. On the Punch, it says here, APC tackles Obedient as Obi alleges threats to life.
Threat to life is a very serious issue. And apart from the fact that he is a public figure, I expect he should have gone to the relevant law enforcement agency, particularly the police, to register that concern. And when you talk about threat to life, there must be specifics. Who are those threatening his life? If he knows some of them, if there are things he has heard or messages he has received, then he should go to the police and register that. Otherwise, this will be considered as political statement just to whip up sentiment. But like I started, the preservation of life is the primary responsibility of man. Where, like they say, when there is life, there is hope. And when you look at the insecurity profiling of Nigeria, I think he has the right and the wisdom has been expressed to shout out. But then he must be ready to also indicate who is after his life, what has been said, what has he heard, what has been sent to him, so that we don't end up like the matter we have in court now, which is the case of Dele Farotimi and the senior advocate of Nigeria, Afe Babalola, who is now saying, okay, the claims you have made in your book, come and justify them. Because when you talk about Section 131 of the Evidence Act of Nigeria 2011, it says clearly that when you allude to some facts before the court of law, you have the burden of proof of those facts. So, but then I wish Peter Obi life to pursue his ambition. And I wish my country also, a security profiling, departure from what we currently have, being branded as an insecure society.
Yeah, like you said, the burden of proof, lies on him, and he also, of course, should approach security agencies if, there is seriously anything like that. But it's up to him to decide how far he wants to take, those threats. If he decides to only just mention, because, he probably wouldn't also have mentioned it, if this New Year message, blah, didn't come about. So let's talk about the response to the New Year message. Did he say anything that was out of place? To of course get the response that he's gotten from the APC's fan base.
Absolutely, in the political realm, you don't keep quiet because you have a teeming population of citizens, electorate, who are being schooled by politicians.
Yeah.
So you don't take any allegation for granted. So if anyone is coming out to say that the country is degenerating into this and that negativities, it's on the other party to rise up and defend. But then, like we say in public relations, that you cannot carve a rotten wood. So I always advise that when your critics come out bringing up issues of concern, you look at them. So if there's anything you need to do, why don't you do that positively? For instance, would it have been just a political noise to be claiming that our refineries were dead about 6 years ago? The answer is no, that was a fact. But right now, these refineries are being revived one after the other. So in life and in business, if you want to go far, you also must listen to your critics. But like I said, the burden is on the party in power now to defend her territory. Otherwise, many out there will conclude that the country has dwindled into oblivion, and politically speaking, you should not allow that. But perhaps...
But isn't that what opposition is about? Isn't opposition there to check the party in power, to be able to feel the pulse of the people and then make statements in that regard, sort of to make them feel like they're on their toes all through?
Absolutely. That is the role of opposition. But you see, the Nigerian democracy is a unique one. Sometimes the opposition that probably should have been handled with AK-47 is handled with submarine machine guns. So, and like I said, if you are not vigilant, the blow can be too much for you to handle. And that is why I also mentioned that the party in power should listen, because the facts are glaring. Are we talking about hunger? Hunger is there. Are we talking about the state of the economy? Those are realities that are there. And again, you try and promote your efforts in dealing with these situations. And I totally agree that the opposition is there to put the party in office on his or her toes. But it's sacrosanct to know that no party will just sit back and allow opposition to give all the blows without responding. I'm not so comfortable with that sometimes when I read those responses, because we studied it under rejoinder in communication. But then that is the way the politicians are. You recall what happened between the former governor of Edo State, Obaseki, and Oshiomhole, his former godfather. It even came to the point where the tantrums went to the personal level of whether the wife had a child or something like that. I mean, but that is Nigeria for you.
Yeah. All right, let's talk security now. ISWAP raids is on the Nigerian Tribune. It says ISWAP raids Borno military base, 6 soldiers feared killed. There have also been other stories. I think we took one in the news this morning when Zamfara communities have been, asked to pay 176 million naira to the bandits, to, of course, for protection or whatnot. And of course, it has led to many of them fleeing their communities if they are not able to pay. Also in the southeast, there's a report of that was put out by Professor Chidi Odinkalu. So let's have your reactions to the ISWAP attack on the military base and all the security challenges.
It's quite embarrassing. You see, recently when Niger Republic came out with an allegation that Nigeria may be having a romance with France to allot space to the Lakurawas to invade Niger Republic, we have denied it, but I also advise we should look at it critically, because when you talk about insecurity, what Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 has amended says, it's very clear that the security and the welfare of the citizens shall be the primary purpose of government. And if we have come to the point where these terrorists, whether some choose to label them as terrorists or not, it's irrelevant now, are killing soldiers. If you compute the population of soldiers and law enforcement agents these people have killed, you'll be amazed. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And I hope that the onslaught against terrorism that the government has embarked upon will be sustained and escalated, because they have invested so much, these terrorists. Now, some of us started coming out to complain when around 2002, one Mohammed Yusuf arose in the Borno region, Maiduguri, and started a doctrine that Boko Haram, that Western education is forbidden. And he started indoctrinating some young Nigerians and some foreigners also that were available. And that is what has grown to this Islamic State of West Africa. And the terrorists across the world are investing in it, obviously. So because in 2009, it went haywire when their leader was taken out. So these are issues. And in industrial psychology, we talk about reinforcement theory. The failure of the government to tame that terrorism campaign initially has given them the oxygen to come to the level they are now. And let me bring a comparison. You also notice that in the southwestern part of the country, suddenly a group came up agitating for the Yoruba nations. And the Yoruba and Southwest elders said, no, they're not going to give you space to operate. You see, so I throw this back to the northern society. That, because when you talk about ungoverned spaces, there are many of them there. And what these terrorists do is that they go to these people that your government has not been able to provide for you, unable to secure you. Let us secure you, setting up pseudo government. In fact, in Niger State, the governor rose at the time to complain that about 83% of the local government areas that have been taken over by bandits. You saw how they operated freely at a time in Kaduna, Central, North, in South Koto, and everywhere. So, and now that the tax reform bill is waking everybody in Nigeria, and some stakeholders, rightfully so, are claiming this will further throw our people into poverty, then they need to look at the foundation of the poverty there, which is, are you permissive to insecurity? But by and large, the president of the country is also the commander-in-chief, talking about Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So his responsibility is to secure the land. And he has the mandate under Section 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended that bestows executive power on him. So I expect that as a nationalist, he will rise up against this challenge. But I will let you know, again, by the concept of conditioning in industrial psychology, these terrorists have sold out to evil. But I pray that Nigeria will be able to tame them. And for the Southeast, I also started complaining when and advising the Southeast stakeholders when we were reading of a truck falling down in that environment and bullets and ammunition. And I kept on asking, who are those moving ammunition into this region? And I warned at the time, don't let those who are enemies of this state infiltrate your region. And here we are now. So Nigeria needs security to even attract the foreign direct investments we talk about.
There's too many. I mean, if you talk of security alone, we just had a security expert, join us. If you talk about security alone, there's too many aspects of, that whole conversation that you can tell that we don't seem fully prepared, to win this fight. Our porous borders, our lack of numbers, look at our army strength, just about 200,000, less than 200,000. And, these people are spread thin across the country. Lack of corruption, that still exists in the system, lack of proper equipment, to win this fight. This is a fight that has gone on for more than a decade. Do you believe that it is even winnable at this point?
It's up to the government. I intentionally mentioned the power available to the president, the executive power. Okay, on the day of his being sworn into office, he said subsidy was gone. Who contended with that statement? When Dangote was engaging NNPC Limited on the issue of paying for crude oil with dollars, the president came out and said, let him pay in Naira. He is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He has the power. I mean, don't let us joke about this. We are talking about infrastructure. The former president, Muhammadu Buhari, spent billions of dollars to buy Tucano jets. Where are the jets? So I think we should be talking about the political will. And you brilliantly raised an issue. The insecurity also has political undertone. Of those who are out to destabilize. And if you are in office and some are resolute to destabilize your operations, then you must rise up also to destabilize them. And permit me to roll in the issue of Nehemiah in the scripture, who came back from diaspora to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and some enemies rose up to challenge him in opposition. He also raised his own army and positioned them proactively. You see any one of them, you take them out. You see, just like the question you asked, I'm concerned. The GMD of NNPC Limited came to the National Assembly at a time and was expressing frustration. How about 5,000 illegal pipes are connected to NNPC pipeline, how they have deactivated about 4,000 illegal refineries, how they have arrested different liters of stolen crude oil. In fact, he confessed there that they are overwhelmed. Meanwhile, a contract has been given to Tanchita Limited of 48 billion naira per annum. I mean, it's embarrassing. A whole nation, we are not talking of a local government. Nigeria is a nation. That some non-state actors, perhaps in conjunction with some state actors, we hold the nation down in poverty when we have so much to benefit in terms of potential. So it's only whether you are we have listened to different kinds of expressions. Oh, we are going to win this, not with kinetic, but non-kinetic. This at a time, the former chief of army staff, Brotai, says Sambisa Forest will be turned to military training, whatever. But when this man was going out, he spoke that we may not win this terrorism war in the next 20 years. And let me also underscore the political undertone I mentioned. And that's why I'm glad this tax reform is waking up some people now to look retrospectively into our environment and look into the future. In 2013, Muhammadu Buhari, who later became the president of Nigeria in 2015, stated that clamp down on Boko Haram was injustice to the North. And he later became president. So where did you expect his bias to rest? So when you don't deliberately engage in security, you remain in insecurity. So the Nigerian case is such that the major stakeholders should come together now, throw ethnicity aside, focus on the economy. And the fact that, in a poverty environment, crises are inevitable. And you can read about the crisis we have in the country, kidnappings, killings, and different kinds of things. Yeah. So here we are.
All right, EFCC sacks 27 corrupt officers as it probes $400,000 fraud complaint. If you can just do this in 1 minute.
Yes, if you look at section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it states clearly that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So it's another. And when an agency that is saddled with fighting corruption and economic and financial crime is also engrossed, having some of the elements there that are corrupt. The best thing to do is to, take them out, like Achan was taken out by Joshua in the Bible, for victory to return, because it's very important that those who are fighting corruption should be seen to be above board. So it's the way to go.
Yeah, but also not a surprising story. I mean, nobody read that and was shocked at all.
Exactly. It's a global thing in Nigeria that corruption appears to be spreading.
Yeah. All right. Judy Ologun, thank you very much for your time this morning and for joining us.
Thank you too.
Yeah.
God bless Nigeria.
I wish your views were more uplifting, and gave more hope to Nigeria, but it doesn't seem, if we're being real with ourselves, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of light at the end of, this tunnel.
No, my counsel is that there should be light all through the tunnel, not just at the end, because many may give up within the journey.
All right, we've shared with you what our guest has to say, and of course, our thoughts as well. Now let's share with you what Nigerians are saying. Stay with us.
Amofimpula Adeoye made a tweet in August 2024, and this tweet has not only been dug out in January 2025, but has also caused a stir as to whether or not a gubernatorial aspirant in Oyo State and of Oyo origin stands a chance based not on his qualifications or what he has to offer, but based off the fact that he's married to an Igbo woman. Amofimpula Adeoye is a Yoruba philanthropist who recently joined the PDP and from certain indications is desirous of running for office. On the 21st of August 2024, he put out a tweet appreciating his family, friends, and well-wishers for celebrating his 42nd birthday. Now, if you see the tweet, I'm hoping that producers can put that up. He thanked his wife, Ifeoma Adeoye, his beautiful children, Adela and Anaya, and this tweet has caused an outburst on social media by Yoruba conservatives who are calling for him to abandon his gubernatorial aspirations, claiming that the idea of an Igbo First Lady is unacceptable to many in Oyo State. The controversy even draws comparisons to Betty Akeredolu, wife of the late Governor Akeredolu of Ondo State. So now the question is this a debate about the quality of leadership, or is ethnicity or the choice of your spouse now the ultimate test for political ambition in Nigeria? Let's see what Nigerians are saying about this and whether or not Amofimpula Adeoye's chances of becoming governor have been irreparably affected by his wife's state of origin. Our first tweet is from Agbari Ojukwu, who says, Agbari Ojukwu has responded to this tweet, sharing thoughts, saying, "Sir, you see that First Lady position? Never again will it be occupied from any woman from Igbo land." And the next tweet is from it says, "Your actions have spoken louder than any words ever could. You deliberately sidelined your Yoruba heritage by giving your children only Igbo names, erasing the Yoruba identity in your lineage. Now you return to ask Yoruba women for their votes so you can bring your Igbo wife into the government house to preside over the very people whose culture and identity you dismissed. Let this be clear. Yoruba women and men will not stand by as you attempt to further diminish our heritage for your personal ambitions. You are rejected and your plans will not succeed. Leadership in the Southwest belongs to those who honor and uphold the pride of the Yoruba people, not to those who disregard it. Your aspirations stop here." We have another tweet, and this one says, "By the way, Adela is of German origin, which means noble, while Anaya has origin in Hebrew and Arabic, which means God answers and cares respectively. I also hope this applies to one popular first son." Wow, shots fired. Away from Femi Uche's tweet, we have the next one that says, "I have no problem with you naming your kids after your wife's tribe, but I expect you to read the room and know what the people of Oyo State want. It has been clear after what Betty did in Ondo State that no Yoruba man married to an Igbo woman will govern anywhere in Yoruba land again." The next tweet says, "With due respect, sir, can we see your children's birth certificate? Is it true they don't have any Yoruba name? Having an Igbo wife is not completely bad, but your children not having a Yoruba name is an unpardonable weakness." We have another tweet from Ade Ade who says, "Who are they? I challenge any of them to show their PVC. So a Yoruba man who marries a foreigner can't contribute to his fatherland because of some riffraffs? What happened to us? What is going on?" he asks. We have Babs Ogundimu who says, Seyi, reading through most of the comments here saddens my heart that we have allowed tribalism cloud our sense of judgment. Omar Sheu. And we have another tweet from Tunde, of course, who says, another Chinedu don't enter our political space. So we are more awake than before against any subtle invasions into our political realms and will not vote for a person who bears no Yoruba name, is married to a non-Yoruba, nor thinks Yoruba first. Sorry you, sorry you, sorry you, he says. And you know where the Chinedu analogy comes from? Goes back to the last elections where we had a candidate from the Labour Party, the gubernatorial candidate, whose Igbo name is Chinedu. Sir, you have a higher chance of being governor of Lagos State than being governor of Oyo. Oyo no be Lagos, so Chinedu got 300,000 votes in Lagos. You won't smell 30,000. And the final tweet, I believe, we have is from Toby Deolu, who says, the same set of clowns in the comment section here saying his first child has Igbo name, another is bearing Anaya and he married the former, are the same people that want to take another man's land in faraway UK. You people still won't stop your tribal bigotry this year. So the question again that I ask is the choice for leadership in Nigeria based off the partners, ethnic backgrounds, or are we looking at leadership, at the quality, the values that this person has to offer? As a nation that has been divided along tribal and religious lines, we must fight against this and come together to be able to build a Nigeria where we all can recognize that we are first Nigerians before we are either Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, or any of the other ethnic tribes that we have. Thank you very much for joining us today on What Nigerians Are Saying. And this is where we draw the curtain on today's show. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to say thank you to our guests. To those who joined us virtually as well, we look forward to joining you again same time tomorrow.
Really heartbreaking what Nigerians are saying. Unfortunately, we don't have time to react to it, but really heartbreaking, and that's really all I would say. We'll be back here again tomorrow morning.
Yes, we will.
Happy birthday to our beautiful sister, Ayo Myra
Happy birthday, Ayo Myra
She is 1 year older today.
Indeed, she is. We love you and we celebrate you, and thank you so much for being a wonderful sister and friend.
Absolutely. I am Osaogi Ogbon. See you tomorrow.
And I am Olive Emodi, and I'll see you tomorrow.